What's up, gamers? This is Jay and Scott from COI. It's that time of the week we talk about video games. We are going to talk about the best games that are on sale on Steam, PSN, Nintendo Switch, Xbox, all that good stuff. We got games that we're looking forward to, games that we're playing. We did a little review on Tony Hawk, and we're going to do, of course, the big talking point of the day, the PS5 reveal. We'll get into some of that. But first, I wanted to talk about my thoughts on what might be a new transfer of power when it comes to the console war. And I don't know, call me crazy here, Scott, but
You're crazy, man.
I think Microsoft might be making a pretty aggressive play to take down Sony. If you look,
I think those are since they can't take down Nintendo. Nintendo has its own style and its own user base, its own fanboys. I don't think that they're ever going to involve Nintendo again, as far as I'm concerned. I think those are the two for the war.
well, so and looking down at sales figures, the PS4 so far has sold 103 million consoles.
It's like double over the Xbox, yeah.
Yeah, and the Switch is at like 52 million, and I think the Xbox is at like 48 million. So what I think though, and here's what's interesting is you were talking about they're not going to mess with Nintendo. There was this rumor going around that Xbox Game Pass is going to be available on the Switch, but they kind of forwent that, and they went ahead and transferred it to Android. So you can play Xbox Game Pass on your phone. And I actually did that earlier today. This update, if you're kind of late to it, this happened yesterday. So from yesterday until this whole thing ends, you can play your Xbox games on your phone. I played what's that game? The one with the Gears of War. I played Gears of War 5 because I really wanted to test it out to see like how good is it, and it looked pretty good. Like I really can't complain that much. I don't think it had too much to between the Switch, if I'm being honest, as far as graphics and things like that are concerned. Not to
The
mention,
difference being, though, the Switch is doing the graphics processing there in your hand, as opposed to what's becoming a more normal thing. I would say more normal as in they're still experimenting with a lot of functions, just like you remember Google's recent venture into it. What's the little controllers that they have? They had the Ouya,
Stadia.
the little box.
Stadia.
Yeah, Google Stadia, where all the processing is done for the most part on their end. And so you have to kind of tolerate the amount of lag between they're doing the processing. They're just kind of shooting you the video in a lot of ways. You're playing the game, but it's a back and forth situation before you press the button, and then your phone sends those commands to their servers who are actually doing the graphic crunching, and then they send you basically a video stream of you playing. And it can work, but if you're on a crappy connection, you might as well forget that.
Yeah, and I think you could say that with a lot of things, though, if you're on a crappy connection. But I didn't play any online gaming, but I
can't say that about playing with yourself.
But I did play, like I said, I played Gears of War 5 to really, stretch it out, so to speak. I played Resident Evil Biohazard, and then I played I played Sea of Thieves, which is a online game, but
right.
I don't know how to play that game, so it really didn't work out. But the point is it played pretty well, and the Game Pass is $9.99. The new Xbox Series S is only going to be $2.99. Plus, Microsoft went ahead and said, hey, we're going to look into a financing plan. If you want to get into an Xbox Series S, the numbers that have been floated around is you pay $25, and that includes your Game Pass.
That's right. And so if you plan on having that plan, a subscription, it's actually not that bad. No. It's not like a Rent-A-Center where you pay $1,000 for a $300, PS4 or $400 for PS4, whatever. You're not screwed in the end. You're almost paying just a little bit over what it would normally cost.
Right. And for the Xbox Series X, they said $35 a month, which isn't bad on that either. Both of those are really
Hmm.
doable, especially in the times that we're seeing now. Um, and I think this could be, and when people start off with a system, they kind of stick with it through the duration of the console war. Interesting enough, on my end, like I just started using my Xbox One. I've had an Xbox One for 3 years. It's gotten like zero play. Just recently have I like started playing a little bit, and I've been playing the old games, by the way. I haven't even been playing Xbox One games. So I think that this is an aggressive move on Xbox's part to say, we're winning this war. We're taking it back. We're going to hurt a little bit. This is going to be a little bit of pain to begin with. Microsoft is going to, or Sony is going to start right out the gate, probably breaking even, maybe losing a little bit on consoles. I'm not exactly sure. But Microsoft is going to start out deeply in the red. But over time,
Well,
they're going to build up
but
on
now
subs.
it is a normal thing, by the way, since the beginning of time, video game time, for um, for hardware manufacturers, meaning Sony, Microsoft, to lose money on a console. Rarely have they just don't make money on the hardware, and that is too because secondly because the people who are third party game developers have always paid a penance. You want to make a game on our system. You sell it for this much. We get this much chunk of it. As far as the money goes, and although I would say it is a good time by comparison, inflation wise, what we're still paying for a system, $400-$500, $300-$500, still a lot of money for a system. Yet, if you look back, I want to tell everybody, I paid in 1995. I paid $400 for my Sega Saturn, and that's about double. Your money is worth about half as much as it was, or it's today, or double at what it was in 1995. That's like paying $800 for a freaking Xbox.
Yeah, yeah. No.
So it really, the system prices are not that bad or that out of reach by comparison, and considering they're both Ryzen Radeon, PCs, we're going to see a lot less of games being system, specific, Sony or Microsoft specific. They're going to be a 95% crossover with most games. So it's really just going to be the hardcore people, I mean hardcore, who have got to play this game on this system, and it's only on this system. It's going to reduce the amount of people that, have to stay with one system and another because those games they're the same system. There's very little difference between either one of
You
them, technically speaking or
you
development speaking.
on our next segment, you might be eating those words a little bit. But no, for the most part, what you're saying is true. And the thing where they're going to get you, and not really even get you, but it's going to help both parties. I think they're actually doing a pretty cool thing here by offering you the finance thing. I haven't looked into it, so I'm not promoting that, but I'm just saying there's options out there. And even if not
Well,
299 for that small console, you get the Game Pass. You don't need to buy anything for a very long time. And the cool thing too, Game Pass doesn't need Xbox Live, so you don't need both. Now, granted, most people probably will, and that is where they're going to make their money too. When you look into the subscription numbers, PSN made like $2 billion last year on
oh yeah.
subscription numbers. So there's a lot of money to be made in that market.
Why do you, and I did hear that the Xbox is going to include EA subscriptions.
Yes,
So all those electronic arts subscriptions that you hated paying for in the past, no, they're going to be included within the Xbox deal.
and I don't know when that drops. I haven't noticed it on my Game Pass yet, but yeah, that has definitely been confirmed. That'll happen. I just think that when I was look up until this afternoon, I was on the line of like, I think I might go Xbox this time. Like this sounds like a really good deal. I don't have a butt ton of free cash flowing around. Plus, there's been nothing that's really gotten me excited about any of these launches. Like they're cool because it's a new console, But for the most part, I've got a backlog of games I need to get to. I've got a lot of other stuff, and nothing has been that exciting to me. And this kind of got me. I was like, well, it's not bad. Like I could take a waiver on that, so to speak, and then like later on buy a PS5 or whatever. So I just think that their aggressive marketing and their approach with this one might actually have us switching from PS4 to Xbox One S.
Yeah, they've obviously kept this secret enough to where Sony wasn't able to plan for it, and likewise, this may I don't know how this applies to other countries. I don't know if I read into that, but Sony being, even though there's Sony of America, Sony of Japan makes all the decisions, and Microsoft for the most part is an American company as far as the Xbox goes, and definitely as far as Xbox goes when it comes to their sales. So traditionally they did a good job of keeping both. I think both companies did a good job of keeping everything secret this time.
They did, and I do think the emergence of Game Pass just gets more and more enticing. Like for one, just as a pure, you know, um, strategy, they basically have said, okay, we're bringing this out. We're putting it on phones. We're putting it where so you can have your Xbox, you know, even your Xbox One, honestly. But you can buy this new system, the 299 one. You can have your phone that you're already gonna have. You buy a simple little adapter. Now you have basically a Nintendo Switch for our games, and you have they've done away with Stadia, and you got your home console that can handle up to I think like it, 4K 1440, I believe. Like
Well, the S is the
push.
14 is aimed at the 1440 60 frames a second deal, where the X is aimed at the up to 4K resolution.
Yeah, okay. Um, but yeah, so you have all of that. I think it was a smart move. I think Microsoft might do better than what they've done in the last few years, anyway, at least. But it was pretty exciting, I should say.
Now, I want to say that you're right in a sense that at launch, there's normally they release a buttload of their system only titles. But over the lifetime of the system, when it gets 1,000 games or more, that number starts to dwindle a huge amount. It starts to shrink to that 95.5%. You follow me?
Right. I think so much of it too. It really comes down to what game, what games are you excited about? And not even series and things like that, because so much of that makes a huge difference in like what you do and what you don't do as far as what console you move to. Like I said, I'm unfortunately again, PlayStation did their trailer, their reveal today, and they won me back without even trying. Did you catch any of it?
No, I didn't watch the release yet. I was kind of saving that for this evening.
So, I mean, I'll just go over some of it. Number one, 80-90% of it was trailers for the new games coming up. And
Of course.
they all look amazing, first off. But they kick it off and they basically they touch me right in my special spot because they kick it off with the Final Fantasy 16 trailer, which is of course a PlayStation exclusive. Now they don't set a date for it, but this game looks sick. I mean, it looks really, really good. For any of the fans of that kind of more old school feel, they're taking us back to like the Dungeons and Dragons, realm of Final Fantasy, back with the castles and the all of that stuff. Uh, it looks really, really good. The characters look pretty decent. I think they need to do a little bit of work on there, and I'm sure that we're gonna, um, you know, we're probably gonna see them take a different shift as far as some of their appearance. Although I will say, most of the play that they showed, it looked like it was pretty well done. I mean, I imagine there's a lot more work that needs to be done that we don't know about, but they showed quite a bit of gameplay, and of course, the CG in the trailer. Um, but as they were referencing parts of the story, you could also see the gameplay that surrounded that part of the story. So it's hard to say, but that game, honestly, yeah, that's where I'm like, yeah, never mind. I'm done with my venture to Microsoft. It didn't even make it happen.
Well,
PlayStation already got me.
I wouldn't count them out yet, just simply because you're gonna get a Final Fantasy. That's all they. I mean, that was that was very expected of them, and
I
it's
no, I
especially
know.
since especially since Final Fantasy people uh, know definitely series wise what they're looking for, what they expect, and what they want to see. I think they've been listening. I think they've been listening pretty well to their fan base.
Well, and we are sick people. Like,
It's true.
we're gonna stick with our Final Fantasy, and Sony has decided that they're gonna start holding on to their Final Fantasy licensing. I mean, the remake of Seven still isn't on Xbox. Like, I could never wait that long. I just couldn't do it. Like, I even if I had for some reason had bought an Xbox One, I would have bought a PS4 by now to play the remake of Final. But again, we're sick people. We can't help it. Um, they did go into there. There was a trailer for a game called Demon Sword, which was another game that like really caught my eye. Um, it looks great. It almost kind of reminded me like of Dark Souls, but maybe a little bit more interactive as far as like NPCs and things like that are concerned. The trailer was really um, was short, I should say. I'm trying to think of the other big ones that were on there because there were a ton. I geeked out over Final Fantasy 16 so much I forgot about some of the other ones. Um,
Now the PS5 they're shooting for a 599, right?
so yeah, the digital version is 4.99. The disc drive version is or no 3.99 and then 4.99.
399 and 499. Yeah, just so. I mean, yeah. I mean, I can see. I'm still so addicted to owning a disc just because it's just a piece of value. Whereas it could be traded or sold or whatever, and you just I don't know. I think the complete push to get rid of that is going to take a lot longer of a fight than they realize.
No, I agree. Um, but I will say this because I feel like torn about it. I think I'm more into the idea of going a digital system. I mean, for one, I keep referencing the Xbox Series S, not the Xbox Series X. Most people, and I could tell you, I think I own a handful of PS4 hardware games. Most of my PS4 games, I shouldn't say hardware, but hard disk. Most of my PS4 games are downloaded, and it's not by a small amount. Like my catalog has 355 games last time I checked. Like so I know how that works. And when you look at the sales, game sales, only 1/4 of game sales are actual disc.
Oh yeah, well I'm not saying it. It definitely younger people may choose to do that. It's very convenient. I mean, a lot of my digital games, of course, I started to download a lot of them, but they weren't on the 360, like on the PS3 kind of stuff. But they were like remakes, like your Final Fantasy. I got like what, just tons of like older Sega games, and kind of indie releases. Some of them are really cheap, and for the most part,
A lot of
all
them
of
are going
those
to be
have
that too. Yeah.
have translated over, and most of them, like Afterburner, I got like Afterburner, like they're not the old school version, but the new updated, really kick ass Afterburner. If you remember Afterburner with the jet,
Yeah.
you're I don't know if you ever sat down in one of the old arcades, but
No, I never
um,
played it, but I know what you're talking about. But yeah, no, you're all right. Like the AAA
it
titles
usually
are
smelled of
most
like
likely.
people's bubble gum, and somebody probably puked in there at one point in time in the Afterburner cabinet because he used to rotate back and forth, and it'd be like lock on, missile, be like, wow, I can smell somebody's throw up. This has totally been in the air.
No, exactly. By the way, I'm glad in the background of this, I decided to play the PS5 reveal trailer, and I'm glad I did because the other game that really kind of caught my eye was the new Spider-Man game. Um, that game
Yeah, I
looks
have seen a trailer for that.
really pretty. I mean, incredibly pretty. And I'm excited for. I don't know. Did you play the first Spider-Man game?
Now, when you say the first
Okay,
Spider-Man
the
game,
first. Sorry, the first one I think of this genre, so to speak. The PS4 version, game, Spider-Man game. It came out. I think it was last year. Was it a
I
year or a year
didn't. I
before?
I have a problem with Spider-Man. I find his powers boring.
Oh, dude, you missed out on a really great game. Like that game is fantastic. The storyline is really really good. One of the few times I can think of playing a game, especially kind of one of those actiony games, where at the end it like really kicked me in the gut. Like I'm a dad of two in my 30s, and I was like, one of those where you're like, oh, okay, yeah, no, I'm good, I'm good. Nope, not gonna cry. Like it really
So,
got me.
so what happened at the end? Does Peter Parker slaughter some children? I'm like confused.
No, it's just you really care about the character. They really bring
Oh,
you. They
okay.
really bring you into the character. They do a good job, and the depth of the game is phenomenal. Not to mention just like any other Spider-Man game, web slinging around town is really amazing and fun. And
Yeah, that part I can understand. Honestly, the web slinging around town, that's fun. Like I said, some of us are real bigoted when it comes to our preferred, heroes as far as Marvel goes. And my favorites have been, for the most part, other than your standard Wolverine and stuff, they've been completely ignored. And so, I have a little bit of, because I'm waiting for like an Archangel game. You get to fly around and shoot razor blades at people. That hasn't happened for me, and a few other ones. So I want to be Apocalypse personally. That's where I am.
I see. I don't know if that's gonna happen, but Miles.
I think the game has too many options.
But Miles Morales, like we've known it's coming out. It was kind of cool to see a little bit of an extended trailer. Definitely, like I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna play it. It's not one of those games though that I'm like I have to buy a PS5 now to play. Like I can wait for a little while. But it
Well,
it, it definitely looked
it
good.
just depends on how rich you are at the moment. Is what I think.
I think yeah, no, without a doubt. Um,
I mean, how many people are going to use that second stimulus for their Xbox or PlayStation?
I don't want to get political, but there's no chance for getting a second stimulus.
Well, damn it! Don't say that. You know how many people's dreams you just crushed?
I know. I
There's nothing
follow
political about it. This is pure greed.
I follow too much of that crap, and I can almost I would take a bet of the stimulus amount that we won't be getting a stimulus.
Well, I won't say that all of us don't need to be stimulated, but that's why we play video games.
Dude, I constantly need to be stimulated. I mean, I want to be
It's,
stimulated like I'm Boeing. That's what I
yeah,
want.
yeah. Well, I understand.
But no, there was a lot of games, and I really hate myself for forgetting a bunch of them because a lot of them really look good. The one thing that I think Steel kind of pulled, like on for me, it pulled me a little bit away and made me like, this is cool, but was the fact that like most of the games that I was interested in weren't going to come out till 2021. They were
Right.
they were given the Q2, the Q3 timeline. Final Fantasy 16, like I said, had no time frame. So I'm thinking 7-8 years before that game comes out. And this is not a problem of Sony's because obviously Sony has done a great job on this new console. It looks fantastic. I really like the aesthetics of it. I don't know if I've mentioned that on this show or not, but I want to get my hands on that controller. That controller looks awesome. But
Now, that system has been compared to just a router because it does look like a
it
router.
does kind of look like a router. It does, but it looks like a futuristic badass router, so I'll take it.
It's
Um,
got glowy stuff on it.
and like I don't know, does it hardware wise? Is it still a slight inferior to the Xbox?
Well, like I said, I think there's somewhat, and I have to go back and look at the exact spec. There is supposedly a difference, maybe in the memory. I think actually the Xbox had the better memory, but the PS4's was clocked higher, and then of course the processor is clocked higher on the Xbox than the PS4. But essentially, and then the PS4 it was supposed to maybe have an advantage with its disk transfer speed. Of course, they're going to both be using non-mechanical, storage, your basic SSDs, but more like NVMe or I think they're maybe both NVMe drives. Which, of course, if any of you have built a PC in the past, they're those little drives you just clip into your motherboard, which are really high speed.
Oh, that's very cool.
And they probably use, I'm not completely familiar yet, but they may be on the PCIe 4.0 standard, which is going to be, well, that probably won't be necessary either, but the bus speed between the graphics card but these don't have a graphics card. These have integrated graphics within the processors.
So yeah, I mean, no, that definitely at least sounds. It sounds like it has some potential to really do amazing things. Like so, and I'm sure it is. One thing, like trying to remember the names, I completely forgot another thing that happened towards the end of the reveal trailer, and they started playing just quick hits of like God of War and the Spider-Man game, and I think Red Dead Redemption might have been in there, but all these big games that we've played on PS4 already, and then it was like it just said PS4 collection, download and play on your PS5. So I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know if
well,
that means like,
I tell
hey,
you what,
you buy this, you get all these games, or if it's their version of the
both
Xbox Game
systems are
Pass.
going to get a butt ton of used to be PC only titles. I mean, that's just how it has to work. I mean, they are essentially standard Ryzen PCs. So I mean, you are going to get a bunch of great stuff simply because they're just PCs.
Yeah, no, and like I said, I don't know if that's some form like the PlayStation collection thing. I don't know if that's going to be something we have to pay for. I imagine, but it didn't mention anything about subscription or anything. It just said, with the PS5, download and play. What does that mean?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I bet you're going to have to pay for them. I can't see them giving out some of those games for free, or maybe you do get a big chunk of games for free. That wouldn't be unexpected as well.
Right, that's where I'm kind of torn because yeah, typically no, they're not going to give you jack, but at launch, a lot of times they do some pretty crazy stuff. I mean, I remember when you signed up when we heard what 6 years ago, like hey, you get when you sign up for PSN and Xbox Live, you get 2 free games a month, and people are like, no, that's bullshit. Now I'm ticked off if there isn't a really good game they're giving me for free, like so yeah, who knows? Who knows exactly?
Yeah, we're not gonna deal with just like a FIFA or a Madden for a free game.
No, no. Well, and we get those anyway if we had the Xbox Game Pass. Uh,
Well,
no,
you get those anyway because people usually leave those on the curb.
God, I wish because there is definitely something I want to talk about with with Madden, and it's not going to make a lot of people happy, but it's the way it is. Um, and I did forget too, a Harry Potter game. They showed trailer for that. That looks amazing. Like I really want to get into that game. I'm not even like a huge Harry Potter fan, by the way. Um, but the game
I'm anti Harry Potter.
really. See, I've always loved like the look of the school, and I love the aesthetics of Harry Potter. When I got into the story of Harry Potter, I was like, I don't really care, just some kid, But
No, I'll admit I have watched those and with the Fantastic Beasts crap, but it was because my wife said, "Come watch a movie with me."
Fantastic Beasts was a good movie.
But you understand, I have to shut up during those movies. I can't speak.
I like your wife; she's good people.
No, I do too. But I'm saying I have to keep my mouth shut during those movies because she's not interested in my commentary when it comes to those movies. Shut up and let me enjoy it, you dick. I'm like, okay.
This is what I'm saying. She's good people. No, and I don't think that this game's called Hogwarts, by the way. So it's not Harry Potter, which I kind of like because it looks like maybe you can create your own character. Maybe there's a different character design going on. You're not playing this dorky little kid, which for some people they love Harry Potter, and that's gonna suck. For other people like
It's a
myself,
generational thing. It
yeah,
really is a generational thing.
most definitely, yeah, yeah, because yeah, then you're gonna get people like myself who are like, no, I don't really want to play as Harry Potter. um, but yeah, so that was just another thing. It was pretty big. There was a lot. Like I said, there's a whole lot to cover. And I'm glad. I'm glad I have the trailer going because I'm watching it while we're talking. And yeah, the new Call of Duty, which I'm gonna there again. I don't want to get too political here, but I really bombed like just bailed out of Call of Duty anymore. And honestly, because like okay, this newest one is about the Cold War, and I don't know. All I'm saying is like I feel like Call
Now,
of Duty.
did you like the Battlefield series,
They're okay,
and not the Star Wars Battlefield ones,
right?
but just the
That was Battlefront.
yeah, well, yes. So what? They're not the same game. I don't know why. For a second, I was just like, well, oh yeah, that's I've played them. I didn't think about. I can see the lure of the Cold War thing. I really can. So I mean, because as far as a piece of history, if they do some real historical battles, that's pretty cool.
I don't. For one, I don't think they will because they never have throughout any of this. Call it like when they go back to Vietnam, you know, way back when they did D-Day. Yeah, that was cool. But they don't ever. They don't tend to tell the whole truth. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's just so many times, like especially during this last Call of Duty, where like I I was actually following the story, and I was like, yeah, my guy's kind of a dick. Like, I'm kind of starting a war. Like, and I get it. You're playing a game with guns and it's shooting, and that's what you want. But also, I do kind of buy into that, that narrative that these games are kind of just like propaganda for the military. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think a lot of those games may incentivize maybe a small percentage of people to actually join the military, but that's a pretty big leap, or a big step as far as going, well, I really like to play video games, but now I want to take a chance at getting my asshole blown off by an IED.
Dude, you'd be surprised by how many young soldiers there are that started off with, by the way, really bad parents who said, "Hey, you're 10. Why don't you play Call of Duty?" And that was, so it glorified it in such a manner that they were going to get into it. Now, if I'm going to go into the multiplayer, hell yeah, the multiplayer I'm totally down for. It's a lot of fun. But at the other side
I'm
of
not a
it,
Call of Duty player.
it's so hectic.
Like you said, I'm a Gears of War kind of player.
Right, right. Yeah, and I think it's a superior game in every in every fashion. So I'm with you on that. I'm just saying, yeah, it's fun, but then ultimately it always gets you always get hacked. There's always there's always people
And
who are
that's the reason I haven't been a Call of Duty player, and quite a few other games actually, just because by the time if I didn't hit it at launch, that's usually what ends up happening is I can't I can't deal with having to deal with people from China or the United States just completely screwing me over, and a bunch of 12-year-olds using hack tools, and it's just like, how think I got that bitch ass and just like, oh man.
No, I know. No, it's 90% of the time it's a little 12-year-old named Garrett in Montana who
And you got that specifically down, Garrett and Montana.
Drinking a Mountain Dew.
I think there's something you need to tell us there.
Yelling at his mom, "Shut up! I'll go to bed when I want."
Some of those kid rage, even if they're just audio, kids losing their shit over a video game. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've destroyed a few keyboards and even a monitor at one point, but it definitely wasn't the same kind of intensity of a temper tantrum that some of these children have.
No, yeah, for sure. Well, and just to get back
and
to
anything I destroyed, I bought myself.
Just to get back to the Call of Duty for a second, too, not just so everyone thinks like, oh, he just doesn't want to play it because of the implications. No, also because as where I agree that they have usually a pretty detailed campaign, and it's usually engaging, but it's usually like 4 hours. Maybe you top out at a 10-hour, $60 for 10 hours of campaign. Yeah, that's not.
Yeah. Oh, right, the individual campaign. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that does hurt a little bit.
Well,
I got a lot more play out of that even in Doom.
Well, especially if you're like you and I, where you might dabble in the online for a little bit, but you're gonna get sick of no scoping and things like that, and you're gonna pop out. So it's a waste of money to me. But for people who
I,
like it,
I
it
think,
looks good. I mean, I'm not gonna shit on that.
well, I think you also need to be a regular COD player to even have much fun. Like any FPS I can get into, cooperative play, but when it comes, unless the COD thing is, as far as the control scheme, unless it's changed very much, there are people that are already so good at it. It's
Oh,
almost a little bit silly for me to
yes.
even act like I can compete. The amount of effort I would have to put in to be competitive in that is more than I'm willing to give.
You're 100%. I mean, 'cause there's people. I mean, we know a couple people who they play Call of Duty for 10, 12 hours. And it's like, no matter
Oh
what,
yeah,
I'm never gonna do that. That's just never gonna be me. Um,
yeah. I did EverQuest like that for a long time, and for those of you who don't know what EverQuest is, think of what WoW copied to make WoW.
yeah, yeah. Except for a little bit better, honestly. Um,
They both have their goodness, but WoW was kind of engineered for a little bit smaller raids, 30 people, 15 people, whereas EverQuest was 60 or more. So you had to get much larger groups together and a lot more politics involved with people. So it was strenuous.
I could see that most definitely. Um, the one thing that I will say, there was a lot of people who were excited about a potential game trailer for the new Silent Hill. They were going to redo Silent Hill.
Ooh.
That never came about.
Oh, it did. They didn't play a trailer for it, huh?
Not that I'm aware of. Although I am watching a trailer right now that I didn't see the first time around. I don't know how I missed it. Who knows if I was chasing a 7-year-old around or a 2-month old. One of the two.
Did you ever see Silent Hill the movie?
Um, yes, I did.
I,
It
I,
was
I
really good.
really like a lot of that. Yeah, yeah. It's like the big triangle-headed crazy man. Yeah, I like that artwork in that movie.
No,
I
and
like the character
all the
design.
games are really good too. But the one I was watching, and everyone else who is listening to this, uh, that was Resident Evil 8, The Village, which I've seen that trailer before. The game looks alright. I haven't really been into Resident Evil in a while, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, Raccoon City and me kind of fell out of love.
Yeah. No, I mean, and have you played any of the remakes at all?
I do have one of the remakes, yes.
They're good. They're fun.
Yeah, what they're kind of what I expected.
Yeah, again, if you're a fan of that series, I can't doubt you for it. It's fun games. I used to be so into it, so pumped. Like I would be pumped for Silent Hill, not exactly for the new Resident Evil. For one, they switch so often about like it's so hard to follow the story. Like what's actually
Yeah,
happening?
it's
Is
different.
this
Those survival horrors of the past that they've done are not the same as today's survival horror.
no?
You know what I mean? Like they're a lot less interactive with the environment than today's survival horror, and I do like the way that a lot of newer survival horrors are engineered to be very interactive.
No, these new ones are too damn scary half the time too. A 35-year-old man or 36-year-old man, I'm like, nah, I'm not playing that. Like, have you played that game Until Dawn?
No, but I've watched a lot of streamers.
There was a few points in that game where I was like, you know what? I think I'm just done for today. I'm gonna wait till it's light outside, and I'm gonna play again. And the new
Now that's
Resident
that's
Evil.
the zombie attack one, right? Where you build up your shit and then the zombies come.
Oh no
Or
no
is that
no!
dawn till daylight?
That's
Daylight till
that's Dead till Daylight, I believe. Until
dead till yeah
Dawn
yeah yeah.
is basically like old school premise of you and your friends are going away on a weekend. You're in a cabin in the mountains, and then people start dying. But that
Well,
game,
that's the startup for so many movies.
right, right. They do it really well. I can say that. It's a terrifying game. But the thing that I don't like about that game, or that makes me not want to play it. Although admit that it's good because the thing that they do, it's the same thing they do in the beginning of Resident Evil 7, where like you don't have a weapon, you don't, and you can't fight, like you can't punch or anything. Like you gotta just somehow like run or figure out how to get out of that situation, and it. I think it's a fantastic move to make the player feel vulnerable because that's exactly where you're at. Is you're just like shit, I got nothing. I'm just gonna, I guess, die. Like
Yeah, I've played a lot of indie games like that too, where it's just like you all you do is you hear sounds, you find a note, maybe you pick something up, you don't know how to use it, or it's missing a part, and you end up just seeing that one scene where you get eaten, or you just start crying in the corner.
right, right. By the way, another trailer. Deathloop is the name of the game, and that game looks like something I think you would actually really like. Um, is a FPS, but kind of thrown together FPS, like as far as like weapons are concerned. Like I think they're legit. Some of them are legit weapons, but this game really kind of reminds me of like a mix between like Borderlands, Doom, um, and I say Borderlands because there seems to be like you can use tethers and things like that as weapons, or you know, uh, I don't know, like a bat hook basically. And there seems to be like other powers you can kind of do. But it looks really, really cool. There again, I don't know if it's a $60 game, but it did look interesting. But anyway, I
Well,
think
I do like games where you can tinker your own weapons, but it becomes like when they talk about Fallout, it becomes a little too complex and annoying to tinker weapons together than what I'm prepared to.
that's another game that if you, yeah, people put their heart and soul into that game. Like I know people who are still playing that game now, like looking for the perfect build, and I think that's cool if that's your thing. I have too much ADD. I think when it comes to gaming, like I'm done with this.
Well, honestly, when I was watching some of the beta players for Fallout 76, I thought it was really interesting just because when they, not the beta, but maybe with the first week of release, where they, you know, the point of it was you could you get satellite codes and shoot a nuke down at your at the area, and then you'd crack the earth, and then like the crazy demon queen would come out from the ground, and everybody would run, and it would kind of be a free for all kind of MMO, killing all the little spawn, and then the crazy flying demon thing that comes out of there. I thought that was fantastic. Like just watching the nuke come down from the sky at a distance.
Yeah.
That was awesome. That was really cool. And then they ruined the game.
How do you feel like they ruined the game?
Oh well, first of all, they put a bunch of things in the game that people were able to access without direct acts, and then
Oh.
they started banning people for finding these things. Like some of the developer rooms, where they had like basically every weapon in the game sitting on a table.
Oh.
People figured out how to get in there,
And they
and then
banned them?
permanently. And people who were also, they figured out how to dupe the weapons. And of course, then a lot of people were selling the duped stuff, and they banned those people, and they banned people who just received the dupe weapon, not that they did the dupe themselves. What I
Oh,
mean by
that's
dupe, of course, most of
stupid.
you mean duplicate if they find a way to do that.
That
And
is
and
dumb.
then of course it wasn't supposed to be a payola system, and everything that anybody could earn you could buy for almost nothing by comparison to what people were supposed to get, and they promised not to do that. And then there were so many broken things in the game, they couldn't fix it. Not to mention that the pre-order packs where you got all this cool stuff like the canvas bag and the other stuff, when
Oh
they eventually
yeah.
gave it out, it
Yeah, it
was
was
like this
garbage,
cheap
right?
plastic crap, and people were just like, no, I didn't pay $200 for this, this Walmart bag. I paid for a canvas bag, like in the picture. And they eventually had to go back because people were probably sending them death threats at that point.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Give
Yeah, I
give
forgot
me what
about
I
that.
paid for.
Yeah.
Oh, there were just so many things. I mean, I hate to just say that's just a few, but or the other game that disappointed everybody and their dog, No Man's Sky. What a joke that was. Oh, it's fully
Oh,
interactive.
yes.
You'll never bump into anybody else. There's lots of other. No, the whole thing was just like a one big lie. And even though over the past year or so, those guys have kind of put some of the things into the game that they were supposed to. You want to talk about a lie, just a flat out blatant lie of a game. I mean, that was
Well,
one of the games that I almost went, I have to have a PS4 for.
well, and No Man's Sky came out years ago. I mean, that was
Yeah, it's been like 3 years, but I mean,
if not longer.
it wasn't a. I don't know. 3 years, maybe 4 years. I don't know. When you get this old, damn it, it all just
No, I
bleeds
know.
into one big mess. But either way, I'm excited. I was excited for an MMO that was so vast and it had these generated planets. When all the beasts on each planet had its own evolution, had its own individual beasts,
It
its own
didn't.
environment,
It wasn't
and that
like a
was
true
totally
MMO, though,
alive.
was it? Like,
Well,
because I didn't
it
remember there being
wasn't. It was
combat or
supposed to
anything.
be. It was. It was supposed to be. Like
Oh.
he even went on like Letterman and like I don't know if it was Letterman. It was a few of the nightly talk shows and showed off this game. Showed like the pseudo dinosaurs and stuff. And he was like, every one of these, well, you can see those, by the way, on YouTube. All the, everything was supposed to be random and individualized for each planet, and it was going to be so vast.
I remember all that. I just didn't remember there being any combat talked about. Only because my friend was like super psyched for it, and I remember being like, "Well, dude, is there even any like thing to do?"
There was supposed to be combat, but the whole point of it is they were like that the universe itself within the game is so vast that you'll hardly ever it'll be rare for even people to bump into each other, much less, especially at the beginning, than have star battles and all kinds of shit like that. So it was there,
yeah.
but they lied.
Yeah,
it
wasn't it like just soon after launch? Like I think wasn't it like within 30 minutes after the game was dropped, people were like, "I just saw a guy." They were taking screenshots.
Yeah, they were just like, I just bumped into my friend, and he's in Australia, and he's only been playing for 20 minutes. And then they go to different worlds, and then there'd already be people there, and then they go to a different world, and the same damn animals were on the same damn planet. It was a joke.
I did want to say one thing I kind of forgot to mention about the Final Fantasy 16, and then I will forever drop it. But it is M. It's rated M, which is crazy for Final Fantasy, and that is something that's kind of cool. It's
probably just rated M for violence because I don't see any like.
There's gonna be no titties, but
big fat bouncy jugs in Final Fantasy just doesn't seem. Even though the Japanese are completely into that, we'll just say it's not there.
None of us want that unless it's Cloud's big fat jugs.
Yeah, I don't want to look at my games like that. There's other media out there for that kind of looking.
That's what I got Archer for. No, I'm kidding. But there was blood, like a significant amount of blood in the trailer, which was cool. One thing and I purposely meant to remember this because I was like, oh, this is finally a game that I think Scott would be really into.
Great.
Abe's
Dead or Alive Beach Volleyball 8.
No,
is that not it? Okay.
Oddworld. And it looks really good. Abe, like way back in the day,
I have Oddworld on disc.
Perfect transition, by the way. Like, I was never an Oddworld fan, but if you were into that game, I could see you being like, "Holy shit, this looks."
I wasn't, phenomenal. But I do own an original PC copy, and it reminds me of also a game called Psychonauts on the Xbox. If you remember that one,
great game. Yes, yeah, that was a phenomenal game. Again, another game that I appreciated. I didn't really play because I wasn't very good at it.
No, I didn't play it too much. I do have a modded Xbox, and so I can go back and play a lot of those games that I just threw a disc in there and copied it over. And not that I say that you should do that, but I did own the disc at the time, so I don't care what you have to say.
No,
and
exactly.
And I have probably 100 old Xbox games on the drive, and then I probably own 50 or 60 original Xbox games because some of them, like the Panzer Dragoon series, like we were talking about, you just can't. Even though the first one is the one that's on the Switch, it did get really good reviews. I mean, so they just made it beautiful. The original game, you didn't have to change too much.
Well, we're going to kind of get a little bit into upscaling here in just a little bit, which is part of that's part of what you're talking about. But I say all in all, the PS5 trailer, it was great. It looked amazing. It made me want to buy one sooner than what I was going to. Um, and almost as a straight rebuttal to my whole thing about Microsoft taking charge. I don't know. After this comes out, now there's good and bad. One of the things I thought was really weird, just on a down note for them, is that this is their big trailer. This is their big thing, and we only got a few real titles that we were excited about or knew about. And in fact, it seemed like, and maybe this is just me overthinking it, but it almost felt like they were grasping for new launch trailers, because like one of them that was in there is Devil May Cry 5, like complete edition or special edition or whatever. But correct me if I'm
Yeah,
wrong. Isn't
Crisis Remastered is going to be coming out soon.
isn't Devil May Cry 5, like, hasn't that been out for a very long time?
Uh, yeah, I think
So
so.
like, yeah, that's what I thought. So like, why are they showing this as you know what I'm saying? Like,
Well, because a lot of people
surely.
who say haven't gotten to the series are like, "Ooh, 4K!" They may have redone the textures and and playing at a much higher frame rate. I mean,
I
there is
suppose.
something to be said about that. But honestly, that's what happens at launch almost every time. They dazzle you with a few little things, and then go, "We know our developers are going to get this shit out there as fast as possible, so you all can just rejoice." But I wouldn't worry too much about it. Both of the systems excite me, like I said, because there's going just anything that you see for PC, and I say this honestly, anything that you see for PC has a good chance, if it gets the go, to make it over to either of those systems. I mean,
Well,
and it shouldn't be either or. You should be able to enjoy either system and have a good PC game come over. We're going to see a lot more crossover, just like you were saying earlier that World of Warcraft may just come over to both systems because it's not a graphical problem. It's whether Blizzard wants to license it, and maybe have separate servers or have combined servers.
yeah, why would you not do that? Like, Final Fantasy 14 has been a huge success for PlayStation and now Microsoft. So yeah, obviously there is a group of people who play console games that love MMOs. Why would you not do that? Um,
And the only thing I can think of is if they refuse to let people give up, especially some of the MMOs, playing on a controller seems almost insane.
you can do it. You can, like,
Oh,
and
you
in
can do
fact,
it. You can do it. But
even as complex as it gets, it actually starts to become second nature.
now, for
Obviously,
most things, I would say that can be true. Like games like, even though I played on a keyboard, Doom isn't bad to play on a controller, and some things I even prefer. But some MMOs, and I don't know how exactly complex the UI is in Warcraft is by comparison to EverQuest, but EverQuest is so bloated. I, it
excuse
just
me.
you'd have to make macros that are unbelievably complex just to be able to control your character.
There's definite, yeah, they definitely do that a lot in Final Fantasy 14. There are ways around it. There's things that you wouldn't think of, like control mapping. Um, you're given, Jesus, a block of 16 combinations that you can push at first, and then if you hit R1 and like circle, it brings up a fresh new block, and you can keep doing that all the way around for 16 more like blocks that you can then set your own um, your own actions to. So it is
Yeah, and
doable.
then it's just up to
And
your memory to
yes,
know where those
yes.
are, where you put
And
them.
a lot of it, like, and as a guy who's played thousands of hours of Final Fantasy 14, a lot of it is like starting to put stuff together. Like, it's on you to organize it.
Don't lie, you're dreaming about your macro sets. I know you are. You're like, oh, I got to switch over to this. And so you wake up and go, what the fuck am I dreaming about? This I don't even want to have these dreams. Can I have a nightmare for once? Because I'm frustrated in Final Fantasy Dreamland.
My nightmare would be that my knackers get deleted. That
Yeah,
my
yeah.
character gets robbed. I lose
Then
everything.
I'd have dreams on EverQuest sometimes too, and I'd be like, in back in the day, like in a really bad place, and can't get to my corpse and can't get my crap off my corpse, and and the big, it just you're just like I wake up and go, why am I dreaming? Why am I dreaming about this? I'm supposed to be having sex dreams or something, not worrying about looting my corpse in the plane of fear. This is bullshit.
Exactly. Oh, by the way, to boost just your point though about PC and console crossovers, already on Xbox Game Pass, there again, you can actually choose, and at least this is on Android. I didn't check on the actual console, but you can choose a tab that is dedicated to PC, and you have access to that tab. So
Yeah,
big PC games, for the most part, are on there already. Like even now. So yeah, I mean you're 100% right on that. But yeah, altogether, I think it's going to be great. I think for $3.99 and $4.99, it's not bad. It's really not. That sucks for some people, honestly. Like anytime you see a number that big, uh, and that's where I have to side a little bit more with Microsoft for being like, cool, then we'll help you out. Let's do, we can finance this, and as long
yeah,
as
they're willing to take a little hit because with the specs of that system, if you were to, you'd be hard pressed to build a PC that good for $500. Maybe my PC is better, but it's not just because I have an individual. I have 5700 XT, which is about a 2070 equal NVIDIA card. So that's a $300 to $500 video card by itself.
Jesus
So
Christ,
you know
yeah,
yeah, I mean, my card didn't cost $500, but a 2070 used to cost that, and mostly the matching performance card on the Radeon is the 5700 XT, and that's also 350 ish card. So I mean, yeah, you're going to spend that just on your video card, not to mention your processor, RAM, your motherboard, your case, your power supply, so you're going to put out more money, and it's actually really really, and although it's not a full functioning PC as it doesn't have Microsoft, it doesn't have Windows 10 on it. You're, I bet that sucker will be hacked pretty quick, and you probably can flip it over to a PC just by booting to a separate drive.
yeah, I'm sure. I mean, you can hack all of these anymore. I mean, but no, I think the future consoles look really really good. I think both teams did a good job in their reveal trailers because like yeah, as somebody, the only thing Sony has me on is the Final Fantasy. Had not been for Final
Yeah,
Fantasy,
so,
I
so
would
you're
be.
just title specific,
Yes,
you know,
exactly,
and
exactly.
and and I that's completely normal.
But I think
That's
yeah,
definitely what you're looking for.
but by far Microsoft did a fantastic job. I
All the
think it's
listeners
getting.
just want to say that Zach will have both systems probably after launch, so don't listen to him about that. He'll
I
sell a
don't.
toe or a kidney
I
or
don't
some
know.
shit and go get both of them.
I really don't know. I'd like to say I will, but I'm not sure. But anyway, yeah, I just think both are great. It's exciting to see all of that, coming out here in the hopefully the near future. I mean, by the way, we did find out, and we didn't even talk about this, that the PS5 will be available on November 12th. So that's coming up. It really is. So I did want to talk about the review. We didn't have a great review this time. A lot of times we get into a good review. So much of that review time was spent talking about the reveal trailer. But I did end up sitting down for a little while with the remake of Tony Hawk 1 and 2. It's on sale right now for not well, it's for sale I should say for $39.99. Did you ever get into the game at all?
I did. I did. I actually own copies of Tony Hawk Pro Skater on PlayStation Pro, and I own one, two, and I think three on the original PlayStation.
See, I think it's a generational thing because when I saw it, I had all of these like just great memories of playing the game, and like even my wife was like, "Oh, what? Why? I didn't know you played skateboarder games." I'm like, "Well, I don't. This is Tony Hawk. Like, this isn't
Skate
Skate.
or die, man.
This isn't. This is Tony Hawk. It's just different, and I don't even know why it's different.
By
Um,
the way, Skater dies on the original Nintendo. I just thought I'd throw that out
yeah, it is. Going back though, like uh, Tony Hawk 2, I think, is in the top 5 Metacritic games ever of all time. So, like, why would you want to remake that? Why would you possibly fuck it up? But they
What?
took a
Well,
risk doing that.
they do anytime they remake. Like I said, I bought the 360, the digital only remake of Afterburner. It was a blast. It is a blast, and just like Tony Hawk, the reason that Tony Hawk was such a big success, other than his namesake, was the PlayStation came into its own. With kids have to remember that the 3D world didn't really exist very well. And the control scheme, regardless of what system that you had, it took a lot of effort for them to use dual sticks, or
Yes,
say the D-pad and the stick.
that was
And
such a new thing.
it took a lot of work for these developers to finally grasp what it takes to do your XY coordinate, and you're looking regardless of how you have your controller. But Tony Hawk hit it on the head to begin with. And so when you're doing, tricks, it was really important to have precise controls. And so when you have precise controls and when you have a good frame rate and a fun skate park and not too much garbage commentary, and by the way, they had good, decent, although cliche rock, kind of punk music
Oh no,
that
see,
played while you played the game. And that was a
I
big deal
gotta
for
disagree
especially,
with you. I think it had the
well,
best soundtrack. I love
Well,
that
yes, yes.
soundtrack.
For the time now, that music is like, oh, that's is that Green Day again? I don't know, but I mean,
Dead Kennedys will never be one of those bands.
well, right? No, 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 they won't. They were the Sex Pistols or some of the other ones, but they're still, for the time, it was really good music, and there were a few other games that were rare that had still had a playing good soundtrack while you played the game. Now, most people these days would go, well, why wouldn't you have good music while you're playing a game? Well, back in the day, the hardware limitations were a little bit different. You could only load so much data into the buffer, and I not only have a continuous loading of textures in the game itself, and at the same time, the game would be decompressing in MP3, because it was compressed music. It couldn't exist because you can only put uncompressed music, your standard, 13, 14, 17 songs on one album. So most of that was data. So it was a culmination of just, they did it right. And when you do it right, it ends up being a lot of fun.
Right, they didn't have to go too crazy with what they did. And here's the thing about the new game. Here's what they changed. Nothing really. They cleaned up the graphics. They made it look better.
Yeah, I was about to say, I don't think too much changed.
The controls are just as spot on. Uh, they didn't fuck anything up, and so I have to say they at least they received my approval. Um, I would they did, and if I remember right, towards maybe Tony Hawk 3, they started with the Create a Skater. They do have that. There's upgrades you can do. And if I remember, even Tony Hawk 2 or maybe 3, they started where you could upgrade your skater himself. They've kept that. Um, One cool thing they have is create a skate park, so you can create your own level,
Right.
and then they actually have that, in an online kind of
It's like
share
Mario
thing.
Maker with people who wear
Yes,
Vans.
yes, pretty much, and that's kind of cool because some people do some really crazy, creative, fun stuff. You can go play on their parks, and
Well, can you share those skate parks? And
yes,
hopefully, will they never take them away from you, Nintendo?
I don't know if they will ever take them away, but I do know that you can share them. And so, yeah, when it comes down to it, I would be hard pressed to say like this is a bad game when it's based off a game that was considered one of the top 5 best games by
Personally,
Metacritic.
I wouldn't pay $39.99 for it. I would wait till it comes down. If you've played the original, it is definitely worth a play. If you were in love with the original, buy it now. If you just were like, yeah, I'd play that again, wait a little bit longer, and it'll probably drop in price.
That's
But if
exactly
you're
where
but
I'm
if you're
at too.
hardcore,
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that sentiment more. Like I would have paid $20 for it. 40 was a little steep, I got to be honest. And for all of the great like memories I have, I think I still ended up like with just downtime. I still ended up like playing like Skyrim more than I played Tony Hawk. So
Oh, dude.
you know
Oh,
what I'm
dude.
saying? And
Let me
Skyrim's
tell you.
yeah. I'm not gonna don't need to go into Skyrim, but like it's fun and it's great, but it's like fun for like an hour, and then you're like, okay, I'm kind of tired of just skating around. Like the one thing I will say, kind of a downside of it, is the isolationist really starts coming out in that game. And you didn't really have other games at the time to compare it to, but the lack of like NPCs, the lack of everything else, it just kind of punches you in the face with this one. It's like I'm just at some weird skate
It's like a
park by
racing game
myself.
without any. It's like playing Blur or Dirt
Yes,
without any other players.
exactly, exactly. And so yeah, I will say that kind of does take you out a little bit. I think adding another skateboarder in there though would make it worse. So I don't know what they're supposed to
Yeah.
do.
No, and you gotta add the little kids on the little two-wheeled scooters that get in your way, and then you gotta add the assholes on the side of the ramp that really just run their mouths so you could get off your board and start beating them,
Right,
or
right. Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. Like I was happy that they didn't include and I can't remember which one it was, but one of them had one where you could get off of your skateboard and run. And I'm glad they did not have that feature in this one because that was really shitty. I remember, but again, it's solid. I would give it like I'd give it a solid 6.5 out of 10, which is
oh wow, that's I thought you'd do a lot better than that.
uh,
Just for sheer making the game exactly like it was before, I'd give it
I
an 8.5.
I hear you there. See, 8 for me anyway. Like anything above a 7 is I'm willing to pay full price. You know what I'm saying? Like I just feel like if it
Well,
is in the top 70% of games, then that's a
well,
game.
that's very generous. That's very generous because I mean, if on a scale from 1 to 10, I mean, I don't know if you back in the day we used to always read Electronic Gaming Monthly, which was actually a hack magazine because they were totally paid off to rate certain games
They were, yeah.
a certain level. But at the beginning of that magazine, they actually did it honestly, and to get that kind of it wasn't too hard to get a 7, but it was damn hard to get a 9.5.
Well, yeah, yeah. I don't have that. Yeah, my ratings, I guess, are a little bit different. But yeah, I mean, my for my entry level, maybe we should. You know what we should do? Since we're doing game reviews, we should probably both decide on a review system and like what. For me though, like what qualifies as something in the top 70% of all the games is that you would pay full price for it, and just the fact that I wouldn't do that makes me go, nah, I can't say it's that great if I wouldn't pay full price for it. You know, like
Well, but then again, you have to remember that it could be a fantastic game, but they could still be asking too much for it. The value of a remake is never going to be, to me, as good as a brand new original with original content. You know what I mean? It's
I
like if they read,
hear that.
for instance, if they read, I love Bioshock. If they read, now the third one blew, but the first and
Oh,
second
that sucks.
Bioshock, oh man, well, you didn't like the third. You liked the third
We
Bioshock?
don't have to get into it. No, I haven't played it. I was I was that's still one of
Oh,
those games I haven't got into.
well, it was Xbox only for a while, and then by the time it made it to PC, then it hit the PS3 as well. So it's kind of a late, but honestly, Bioshock's just the story, the everything about Bioshock 1 and 2 just had me drooling, and you know that's a game that not only scored fantastically with reviewers, but you know, although I knew what to expect on the second one, it did have a separate kind of storyline, and I would have paid full price, and I'm pretty sure I did pay full price for those games. But on a remake of something, that's when I like go to Xbox Live or PSN and find the remake, and it's $20 or maybe 25. Even if it's done really well, I just a remake doesn't doesn't really pull me in to the full. I mean, that's the what a
I
two
understand.
thirds price
I
is
understand
$40.
exactly what you're saying. Here's where I would go, and this is my only thing, and it's only going to really affect with Tony Hawk here. Is that like I totally agree with you, But I'm also thinking like I wouldn't tell, not just that I wouldn't pay for it, but I wouldn't suggest anyone else to pay the full price. Like there's some
No,
games, there again, the BioShock collection or whatever. We're talking about BioShock. If you've never played the
right
first
on
and second
Xbox
one,
One.
yeah, you should pay full price for it because it's that good of a game. If you have played it, then I would say, yeah, I would wait till it comes down. And there's certain games I can always look through someone else's lens and be like, this just isn't my cup of tea. So yeah, I wouldn't. But I just don't think Tony Hawk. I hate to say it, man. I really do. I don't think it's anyone's real cup of tea. Like I think it'd be hard pressed to find a lot of people who are like still into that style of game. Like it's fun. Like I said,
The
for like an
gaming world is
hour.
big enough now. You can find people who still to this day plug in their PS1 and slap in Tony Hawk and like play for a few hours a week. There are those people; they do exist, and there's like probably
No,
some of
you're
those.
right. You're 100% right. I just don't like. I guess I should say I don't think that there's a lot of people. Like, it's a small minority that I think would still that would say, "Hey, I listened to that guy tell me I should pay $40 for this game, and he was right." I really think if
It's going to be
90
older players too, because younger people are
percent.
going to be like, Tony Hawk, isn't he that guy that's like 55?
Well, and even I think the older gamers are going to be like, "This game wasn't what I thought it was." I really think you're going to have that experience if you play it again, especially the remake, where you're like, you're excited to get into it, and then you're like, "Okay, this is cool, but when does it get like really fun?" And it's
Okay,
not
so
going to happen, you know?
we'll
Like,
recommend make sure that you at least try to, if there's a demo for it, play the demo first.
yeah, yeah. And even then, you're probably going to enjoy it there for a little bit. Like, and I'm not saying it's a shit game. I'm really not. It's just the funness of the game, if you will, just wasn't what I thought it would be. Anyway, you did have a piece about retro upscaling. Educate
Well,
us,
so
Scott.
we were discussing. I have kind of a fetish with some of the games that I grew up with, and of course back in the day when people used televisions that weighed more than their little brother, we had to use composite, which for those of you who are familiar with little RCA cables on the back, you can plug into some of your old systems. That's the left and right audio, and the yellow one being composite. Now that composite video, although that looks clearer than RF, which is your little cable screw in, the composite is RF, by the way, is all of it. It's sound and video. But when you use RCA cables, you get the sound separated channels, and then you get your video only channel, and then you've got S video, which is basically the same thing, but even a clearer sync with your monitor's refresh rate. When that's a little bit better, but then of course most of you know your modern connections, which are your HDMI, which carries digital, not an analog signal, which is all the old stuff, digital sound and digital video, and then your component, which is your red, green, and blue, and then your left, right audio, and that can carry digital or analog, and those are still on everybody's televisions these days. And so the biggest point of it is all these older game systems, I would say all of them, many of them, we'll start with, say, just a regular Nintendo, which, as it sits, only outputs a video and an audio channel, and it's composite. So it means it takes the separate red, green, and blue channels and smashes it into one. And although it looks okay, maybe on your flat screen, your television still has to blow it up, because those things came at 240p, 240 pixels. Now you got to remember, your big screen television is either 1080p, which is standard, high definition television, or your 4K television, which is over 2,000, pixels. It's 4 times the resolution, like literally stacked 1, 2, 3, 4, of that picture. So a 240p is like, if you've ever seen a picture-in-picture, that's about where your Nintendo size output of the graphics was. It's a little picture in the bottom. Well, your bigger screen television, if you plug in, if you've got an older RCA composite input, it has to blow it up. And the problem with that is your TV actually has to crunch those numbers and blow up that thing. It causes lag between the time you press the button on your controller and when you see on screen. And it also kind of blurs the image. Well, so the point of this is there are some fantastic and, scaling out there. And there are some really shitty ones too, so you have to stay away from them. But there's one company, at least one or two companies specifically right now, that can take advantage of a few systems that had native or with a very cheap mod can output red, green, and blue. Now, this RGB output is not the same thing that's on the back of your composite or your component inputs where it's red, green, and blue, left and right. It's a different synced signal. So you can't use that directly, but there are scalers that can take that signal and do a 2 or 4 times scaling. And they do it digitally with an FPGA. And an FPGA is a processor that you can tell it to act like a certain processor. It can be all kinds of different processors. You can tell it to be a Sega Genesis 68000 series Motorola chip, or you can tell it to be, a Super Nintendo chip, and it will literally reorganize itself. It has to be programmed, but it's just they're the coolest. FPGAs are used for all kinds of things that you wouldn't believe anymore. But point of it is, it'll do a perfect. It will take the RGB signal. Now that's red, green, and blue from a Sega Genesis, an original Sega Genesis. It actually outputs an RGB signal that you never knew was on that multi-out. The same thing works for an original Super Nintendo. They output RGB, and you never knew it. So you can get like a cheap $6 to $10 Super Nintendo or Genesis SCART cable. That's SCART, and that's actually this it looks normal on the Super Nintendo or Genesis plug-in side, but on the other side there's this giant, ugly, clunky silver wide connector. And what that is SCART is the European connector to their TVs. Now it doesn't matter that it's European because you want to buy NTSC SCART. But like I said, they cost nothing on eBay. But then there's a company that I have a couple products from, and these products have literally changed. They will make your old. Now, if you're lucky enough to still own, or you can go to Goodwill, buy a big old CRT television, and some of the later models, the ones that more like have the flat glass in the front, they have composite input or component inputs. The red, green, and blue, and right and left audio.
Hey, can I ask you kind of a dumb question real quick?
Yeah.
Is Goodwill, is that like a national chain?
Yeah, Goodwill is a national scam where you take your stuff.
My point is, so like that's a reference most people will get, right?
Yeah, I mean Goodwill as far as your secondhand stores, or if you have like a Craigslist day where everybody puts their shit on the curb, you're bound to find still to this day people slapping, freaking 27, 32-inch Trinitrons out there at the curb for free. I mean, at Goodwill, they're $5 and $6. So, I mean, we're not talking about spending any money on the television at all. So there's a reason you want the aspect ratio.
What's the cost of like that SCART connector?
Well, the SCART cable itself is like $6 on eBay. But what it is, there's an in-between here. And the middleman is a scaler. And for those of you who know, there have been some fantastic scalers on the market, but they were stupid expensive. And that was really and they were hard to find. Some of them, and you'll see a lot of old school streamers that use them, and you'll see a lot of people who and they could take different inputs and output them HDMI, and take RGB inputs and output them for high resolution. But when I say they were expensive, they were in somewhere between the $500 to $800 range. And so, yeah, which is absolutely dumb. But I've found at least one company actually a couple, but one company that is an American company. They make their own hardware, and it's FPGA scalers, and they have the best options and some of the cheapest. And the reason I say this is There are many systems that can output RGB, like your TurboGrafx 16. The Sega Saturn outputs standard RGB right from it. You don't have to buy anything except that cable. But there's a company named RetroTink, RetroTink.com, and they make scaling options that do perfect 4x or different scales. They quad the pixels and blow them up with zero lag, and they are crystal clear. You can even have it output on HDMI. I have a SCART to component because I want to use the same aspect ratio as those older games ran. You know, original PlayStation, PS2 started to give you a little bit of options for widescreen or not, but PS2 also outputs 480i and 480p. And so, which I means interlaced, but most of the time you're going to use the P, just like 1080p, which is non-interlaced. Interlaced skips a line. So the point of it is that you can, I think mine costs like, and you can find it on eBay, but I would prefer going to their site. You can buy a clear case or a 3D molded case for like no extra money. You can just choose which one. But for $69, you'd use that cheap SCART cable from your system, and it outputs component and, of course, your audio, and it is crystal clear. I mean clear as in it makes it, if you can find an old television that's not blurry or been dropped on its side, and the cheap way, and I'll tell you, this is the way you go. If you go to Goodwill and you want to look for a TV or you just want to test out a TV, bust up the on-screen menu. It's the OSD, the on-screen display. You know, the menu you pull up and go through the settings. If that is clear, if that's clear and crisp, if the little green or blue or whatever letters, if it's not wavy, if it's not bouncy, if the letters and the graphics of the OSD, then on your menu options are clear, then you're probably pretty good to go. And pay a couple bucks for a television. It will take all of your older systems, and that's like PS1, Saturn, and even Dreamcast and back, and you can have a better picture. Don't shit on it till you try it on a nice older Trinitron or an old Toshiba television. It makes those old games look better than even a big flat screen can, because it doesn't have to put jail bars on the side, black areas, because the picture is 4:3 and not 16:9 for all those old systems, and it is pixel perfect, meaning there's no blur between any pixels. There's no, unless you're playing on a Nintendo 64, then you're just going to have it. But a $15, $17 mod on a Nintendo 64 on an NS1 model, you can do yourself. It is not difficult, and it will output RGB, and you will have the best looking Nintendo 64 output you have ever seen. So there are other mods, but some of the other mods that do HDMI outputs, they are hundreds upon hundreds of dollars. So this is the best, cheapest way. So for under $100, you can have every one of your retro systems with one of these SCART cables, just about, and have the scaler and have perfect picture with zero lag, scaled up to where it should be, and it will work with all your flat screens. Don't get me wrong, I just love the CRT look.
So okay, and you're more of a retro gamer than I am. You play the the modern stuff too, but I think you spend more of your time in retro. And by the way, whenever there's a comment of like, oh, that guy is the dude who actually knows about hardware and knows,
I've been a computer technician most of my life, and I also was the manager of multiple arcades in the late 90s. Like the guy who, I'm the boss of the quarter guys. And I built and rebuilt arcade machines. I have an arcade system in my house I built from scratch, and it's not like an arcade one-up piece of shit. I have half controls, full coin-op, the original Street Fighter II marquee, and it's full JAMA in the back, wired myself. So
I'm like the color guy, and you're like the actual like dude who did it, kind of thing. If you break it down
I'm the guy who used to smoke blunts all day and play Mortal Kombat 3 and race Daytona with my assistant manager for days on end. So
see, that actually sounds more like
get paid to do it.
You would be the guy who built the damn thing. But yeah, no. So okay, so from a non-hardware techie guy, but you did say a couple things in there that like kind of perked my interest. Number one, just the fact that you can get all that done in under $100, and like for me
Oh yeah.
personally, not really a big sell. But my son is huge into retro games. This, fantastic option. But you did mention Dreamcast. Let me ask you a question on that. So, and I don't even know if we're able to really promote the idea of doing this. I have no idea, but I don't care either. Um, what about ROMs? Or is a ROM gonna affect that, or can you like?
No, I personally I'm not a collector. I do have a shit ton of games for every system. But when it comes to systems like, for instance, most people in the U.S. that are of my age barely remember the TurboGrafx 16. And it was a system in Japan called the PC Engine. And it's the same system, but it was huge in Japan. Almost people don't know about it over here. And it was actually the first system that had a CD drive. The second one, of course, being the Sega CD add-on for the Genesis. But they had some fantastic games. Like if anybody's played Splatterhouse on the Xbox 360, those games, there's Splatterhouse 2 and 3 are on the Genesis, and the original Splatterhouse, which was an arcade, made its home debut on the TurboGrafx or PC Engine TurboGrafx 16. And those. Wait, what was the question again?
Okay, so and I'll follow it up with why I'm asking this question, because first off, I want to say prerequisite to my question is that I want to get this to be known. I'm a huge supporter of secondhand stores and
the ROM.
Namely
That's right.
And namely like secondhand game stores, and only because I slightly remember as a teenager this thing called a record store, and you would go there would be posters everywhere, you'd be digging through CDs and albums, and it was this amazing place to be. Well, now we have game stores like that, but if everyone keeps doing ROMs and digital download, we're not going to have those either. So
I would say yes, that's possible. But the retro game market is a little different these days. And where I was going with the TurboGrafx thing is it's almost impossible to find in any used game store TurboGrafx games.
We're talking basically the same language here, because I was going to say, but with and I was going Dreamcast because unfortunately the Dreamcast, the disc reader, you could wear that thing out pretty easily. By this point,
well, yes, and the Dreamcast used the GD-ROM, and you can burn discs for your Dreamcast, but the problem is it really stresses out the fragile drive and the laser reading normal CDs, and Dreamcast drives are not. Now, what he's talking about is for cartridge-based systems, you can buy your EverDrives, and although there are Chinese cheap EverDrives, which I do own one, there are also, if most people are familiar with the actual company called, the guys who make the EverDrive, which is Kriz, and there are lots of, and he's like one of those like cool freaking hardware hacking weirdos that has, I think it's Kriz.com, K-R-I-Z-Z, or you can just do EverDrive, and you'll go to Kriz's site. They do sell them in multiple places in America. I think it's an American company, but they make the little carts where you have an SD card, you slap it in there with your ROMs, and you've got every system that every game on that system that ever existed at your fingertips.
Right.
Now, legally, you're supposed to own the game.
And as where I have a system I have a thing like that myself, so I'm not going to completely crap on it. I do spend a lot of money at my local secondhand game store, so I feel okay about it. But yeah, I don't want people to overrun that, like to end that thing we have, because it is beautiful. And it's awesome to go to a store where you can find games and whatever. But like my original point, or what you're trying to say too, is some of these games are just goddamn impossible to get. Or with like the Dreamcast,
they're super expensive, way out of everybody's price range, and they're almost impossible to find.
Neo Geo
and there is a difference, right? Well, the only Nazis about it are Nintendo, and even though some of the let's say the intellectual property copyrights have even gone out of some of Nintendo's games. Nintendo is the one who has threatened some of these ROM sites that host 20, 30, 40-year-old arcade game ROMs. Nobody's making money off these hardly anymore, except for maybe some of the companies that pay like 1UP, say Arcade 1UP pays a company a little dividend to put, maybe something a midway like Pac-Man or Mortal Kombat or something, which is still an active license.
And let's be
but
honest,
it doesn't really hurt the market to use ROMs with old school stuff because it's unavailable to buy, and it's also very old. If it was something that you could purchase to support, and some games do have rehashes on, you can buy them on the other systems, and it is cheap. And if you want to play it on your a game that's like increased to 4K resolution or better, graphics that just it's a rehashed game, but it's like the old school. Totally do that. I have Ultimate MK3 for like on the Xbox download. I buy these games as well, but like I said, for some of the cartridge-based stuff, if you want to play on a Super Nintendo, you want to play on a Genesis, these things are. I mean, literally, I have a copy of Mega Man X7 on the Super Nintendo. Last year, it was $100. I looked it up just because I've been slow as crap to throwing it on eBay. I looked it up again. It's now $2, and that's just the cartridge, not the cartridge with the boxing instructions. So in a year, Mega Man X7 doubled.
I think that's way blown out. Suikoden is another game like that, although that's PlayStation and up. But but yeah,
Dreamcast games the same way. Sega Saturn, PlayStation 1 games are a little more common.
If you're looking for Super Mario RPG, you can find that at a local store for $20-$30. You should just buy
Super Mario RPG. Oh hell no! Hell no! RPG is hard to find. It's money, buddy. You're talking a bill for Super Mario RPG.
There is one in our town. I just saw it like yesterday.
No, there may be one, but it ain't no $30. And if it is, I'll go buy it.
he has I think he had 39 on it.
Up at Outlet Mall.
Yeah, I was looking at it and I was like, and then I was like, nah, I shouldn't. I'm never gonna play it.
I think that's the largest Nintendo game. And here's what's funny. I'll tell you about this. There are limitations to and that's a perfect example. There are some games that the SD cards the SD cards, the EverDrives, have some limitations to them. They're starting to not have those limitations, but some Super Nintendo and some Genesis cartridges had extra chips, maybe an extra sound chip processor or an extra this or that. And the EverDrives are just kind of like for those 95 percentile carts that didn't use something very special. For instance, like Star Fox. Star Fox, they do have EverDrives that will play Star Fox now, but they literally had to put an FPGA, which, like I said, can turn itself into any processor. And if you remember the old FX chips, not the AMD FX series, but the FX chips that drove the 3D, now they have EverDrive carts that will do that. But Super Mario RPG, you have to buy the more expensive ones because it has a whole bunch of extra stuff. And I think it may be the largest memory capacity Super Nintendo game ever made.
I think you're right. No, but okay, so my original question, as I'm trying to dance around the fact that people should still support their local game store. But if let's say you have, I'm not even going to name a brand name, but you have an emulator and you have it stored in, say, a Super Nintendo or something, that kind of device. You can still hook up a SCART connector to it. You can hook up the upscaler. Is that going to make the ROM, like let's say you have Dreamcast ROMs, because let's say you have a Dreamcast, but you don't want to ruin it by playing it all the time, and it is kind of weak hardware, so to speak. And it's already
the scaler doesn't have anything to do with it, but if you have, yes, I mean and that's one thing that that is the point of a different part of the retro field, which also is a good thing. Now, so the older systems, they have carts. That's a no-brainer. You can just Game Boy Advance and all those systems. Now, when you talk about CD systems like the PlayStation 1, the Sega Saturn, the Dreamcast,
you attach those.
There are new FPGA-based drive emulators. Now, these are all new, and I mean new within the last year or two. And also, if people have been paying attention, there's a cartridge now called it's also by Kriz, and there's another company called Terra Onion, which makes one as well. Not only is it a EverDrive, but it's a CD drive emulator. In other words, You can take the CD images from Sega CD games, and it's in a cartridge. So you can take a little Genesis 2 or 3, slap that
Right.
in there, and now you have a full Sega CD whole deal. Because it's hard. I do have a working Sega
So
CD,
and
but
that's
they're becoming rarer to find.
and that's actually what I'm talking about. If you've got one of those kind of deals, is that upscaler? Is that going to also make those games look better?
The upscaler, the game output is the same. The upscaler doesn't care.
Okay, so
The resolution from the games,
it's going to make it look better, like even if it was the
yeah,
okay. That was all I was
that's
curious about.
those two things aren't in conflict in any way, shape, or form with each other. One of them is just works with the video output. The other one is the media and the system reading itself. They don't work in the same. They don't even different sides of the ball field. One's eating and one's pooping. So it's yeah, you can, and that's not actually a bad analogy for that. But yeah, those things are a little more expensive. They're in the $200 range, regardless of what system you buy for it. Whether it's there's one for the TurboGrafx. It's also made by Terra Onion. I didn't make up these names. Terra Onion, like TerraOnion, and they make. Then there's some other companies. There's one that just came out. There's the PSIO, PSIO, for the PlayStation 1, which does that. It works a little bit differently, but there's a brand new one called the Super, or the place. Anyway, there's a SD card input CD drive emulator that you literally pull out your laser, smack this unit in. It's not that easy, but you input this.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
actually, the drive emulator is, and you make images, because even though a lot of your PlayStation games may have copyright protection, your drives can read them and make disk images from them, and then you can just slap them on. And the load times are almost the same, but it's not because of the thing's slow. It's because, remember, it's emulating exactly how the CD would input it from the data. So the data stream has to come in the same rate. You can't just automatically tell your PlayStation that used a 1x or 2x CD reader to read at 24x or 52x.
Right.
So it has to still come in at that same rate. But
So
like you said, you never have to worry about damaging your old games. And if you have a working laser, well, you can just take it out and put it aside. And for the day that you want to put your laser back in, which will probably mean never, you can do that. But those are excellent options for people trying to extend the life of their system, or say your Dreamcast or your Sega CD is screwed. You have one, and you're like, well, how do I do this? Well, you just get one of those things, and you can rock your old games, and yes, you can download ROMs and play them as well.
that's awesome.
And there's no difference.
So, and that's something, yeah, I think everyone should definitely check out, especially if retro gaming is anything that you're interested in. But that does kind of take us, we're talking about ROMs, we're talking about something else. We already talked about probably the big gamer news of the week, that being PS5. Let's hit on the second biggest gamer news that has been going on for the last couple weeks. And we got two big stories associated with Super Mario 3D All Stars. The first one being that it's sold out in most places.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to get. If you look it up on eBay, I've seen them going anywhere between $90 to $500. I haven't seen many people actually say they're going to buy it at $500, but I've seen it listed. I've definitely seen it at 120, 150, and it's got bids on it. Um, I have a real, yeah. I'm not going to get into it, but let's just say somebody might be working a little thing on the side so that they're not going to have to pay for a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox One S. Somebody
Hey, that's how some of these smart people work. It's that's
somebody you know and love might have a thing going already. But no, I do think it's kind of shitty that they're doing that. Like, we're running into this problem already. There's a lot of people who are not going to be able to get this game, and there's a ton of kids I think that are excited for it. And um, not everyone has that kind of mobility to be like, well, fuck it. I'll just, I'm going to pre-order it before anyone else, and I'm going to pre-order a few copies. And
yeah. This
and
is first round.
I'll get the digital. No, and that's true. I don't know if they're planning on another drop soon. Um, because that would be something really important to know. But also the other things about it, aside from the fact that it's sold out, um, so and you're gonna have to help me along with this, but Mario 64, one of the big complaints is its ratio and that it's not a full screen.
Right. It's a 4x3, which
That's
is original.
And a lot of people are like, why
And the
couldn't
same
they
thing
just
with
do that? Is just make it a full screen.
Well, and it's a good question, but they could have, but the problem is they use emulators. So when you're playing these games, they're actually using off-the-shelf, standardized emulators that emulate the GameCube and the Nintendo 64. And those emulators are written just like they would. They don't change the game code. They use the standard code that's in the game. Those games output a particular amount of pixels and a particular amount of resolution. And they're not going to change that, because in order to do that, you have to change a lot. And it's a lot easier to just change, say, textures or colors or pixels than it is to actually change the ratio of how the game renders its polygons.
Yeah,
So
apparently there was a lot of freehand codes that were also associated with these ROMs. So yeah, that adds completely to what you're talking about.
yes, and actually Super Mario 64 was written. There's people have the real smart people in this world that we don't know, but we know they exist, have gone back through Super Mario 64, even some ways in an attempt to see if like the 100 and something star was, like the secrets. They literally went through game code lines to find if there were extra stars that nobody had got before. And some of these people found out that they Mario 64 was written on a Silicon Graphics Incorporated workstation. And if anybody remembers the original Jurassic Park was also rendered and developed from SGI. And they're companies that no longer exist anymore, but they made a big mark at the time, especially for Jurassic Park. Because in 1995, no one had, or 1994,
like
I guess.
The hardest goddamn game, by the way.
No one had ever seen dinosaurs rendered that damn good. We were like, whoa, it's so real.
I thought you were about to say, oh, you were not talking about the game, are you?
No, I'm talking about the movie.
Oh, I was talking about the game. That's what I was like, when you said nobody's ever, and I was about to say beat that goddamn game, because that game was the hardest goddamn game.
No, I'm pretty sure I beat it at some point when I bought the N64 right on launch, but because that's one of the games I bought with my system. But yeah, so SGI, they had a very unique, and I want to think it was like some kind of Unix backend on their system. But the guys at Nintendo, they weren't using standards. They didn't have like an industry standard of writing, and they were doing really weird code. And so when the guys went back to kind of look through the games to see if they could hack any of the secrets out of it that no one had found before, they were like, man, this crap is weird. In fact, they wrote it so freehand, like you were saying. They did it pretty, for the power that the N64 had, which was almost a 100 megahertz processor, and that's saying a lot for video game systems of the time. It ran kind of crappy. It had some slowdown in parts that they couldn't figure out why, and that's because the guys writing the code for the game did some really weird stuff. And so there are things in that game that I wouldn't even attempt for them to change, because they could really screw it up if they tried to. Those guys are probably dead or jumped off buildings, by this time, especially if they're the Japanese code writers.
Well, especially if they're working in Nintendo, and yeah, those slave drivers. But so
Miyamoto told me to jump off the building. I'm going.
I've had a lot of people say, like, this speaks to just how lazy this collection is. That they really didn't do very much. One of the questions I had, though, was at first, this was breaking in the gaming world, was they're using the PLL version, and the PLL version can only do 25 FPS as per the NTCS version.
NTSC. So PAL is the system for European television.
Right.
And unbeknownst to a lot of newer people, the old school televisions in Europe ran at 50 hertz, which is 25 hertz horizontal and 25 hertz vertical, and that's the refresh rate. See, old school televisions, if you ever watched the deal of the Outer Limits, they say, we control the horizontal, we control the vertical. So an old television has two scan areas. It has horizontal scan and vertical scan. And so their televisions ran at 50, and that is also coordinated in a multiple of the clock speed of the processor. Now, on the Nintendo 64, it probably didn't make too much difference because it's that much faster of a processor. But for older systems like a Genesis or a Super Nintendo, remember the Super Nintendo ran at 3.25 megahertz. There you go. That's how fast that sucker ran. And the Genesis ran at about 8 megahertz. So if you played on a PAL Genesis, on an American television or on a European television, it was noticeably slower. I mean, the whole game.
And that was the whole fear, is that, hey, this is going to run, 5 FPS slower. Basically, they're not going to be able to get to what they say they can. But then Nintendo clarified and said, no, we're using a converter upscale thing, and we're going to hit that mark. My question: why wouldn't they just use the American version of the ROM?
Well, I don't know if it was the ROM or the emulator. So either one of those, it probably was the ROM, because the ROM is really what defines it. Well, if you can run a PAL ROM on an American NTSC system, but it will run at 50 hertz, so it will run slow, and sometimes they're incompatible depending upon the thing. But you can't do the reverse and it go, because you can't put an NTSC game on a PAL system. So it won't work. Because
is there some technical reason why they would take it and then have to convert it? Aside, when it would seem like the easy route would be to take the version that already exists that has the numbers that they want.
And here's what I think: unless Nintendo used in-house emulators, in other words, they didn't use off-the-shelf emulators that other people have written, which by the way, most every emulator I can think of is open source. So most people who write open source software say, you don't have to pay me anything, just give me credit that you used my goodies. So if they used in-house emulators, in other words, if for whatever reason they just wrote an emulator and the guy doing it wrote it for European systems, that's I don't know why they would do that either, because Japan is also NTSC like America and like Canada. Yeah. So who knows?
I didn't know if there was just something I was missing on that, but and my final question to you on this is: do you even give a crap about Mario 3D All Star? Like, do you feel this is, like, for you, one of those things you're just like, why is this? Why does everyone give such a
Mario
shit?
64 is awesome, but I'll play the original because I have the original and I have a Nintendo 64. But Super Mario All Stars, they call it All Stars, but really it's just the GameCube games. What is it? It's Super Mario Sunshine
and Super Mario Galaxy. Oh, and
Super Mario Galaxy, which are both GameCube games.
Before I forget, one other thing that came out that was big about this: the last trailer before the game came out, and this is how crazy gamer people are, and this is why one of the things, like, when we were going to do the show, I was like, dude, I feel way more comfortable talking about politics because I can easily fuck up things with video games or just not really even think about it. This is how crazy some of you gamers are out there. People realized in the first part of this, like, 30-second trailer, they played the music from Mario Galaxy 2, and everyone's like, oh, that's the teaser. They're gonna have Super Mario Galaxy 2 in here. So there is rumor, nothing's been confirmed, nothing's been denied, that Super Mario Galaxy 2 may also be somewhere in this. We don't know.
It's like hidden. You get to earn it. If you ask me, I say that's probably not, and it's probably just they're going to release a second pack.
I tend to agree with you. Yeah.
Like it's going to be. I thought it came with the All Stars deal. Also came with like the original Super Nintendo Mario Kart. Didn't it have that?
No, actually, and I
didn't have any of the Mario Kart
because the Nintendo Switch Online released the original Mario All Stars. They did on Mario's birthday, and it was, it's free if you have Nintendo Switch Online. But that had the original number two, and then the third, and I thought the original also has the Lost Levels. I think.
Right, which is actually Super Mario 2 in Japan.
Yeah, yeah, which was just incredibly difficult. Um,
Yeah,
but
I mean,
yeah, so this like, but again, is this something like you're at all even think? Well, you don't have a Nintendo Switch, but if you did, is this something you'd be like,
but I
oh
do
man,
have a 3DS XL, so come on.
right? I mean, no, exactly. You don't. This ain't a dick measuring contest. And if we are based on switches, that's sad. But no, it's just like I don't know. Is this something that just
You have the
completely
lavender
passes
one.
you
I
by?
have a yellow one.
I do have a yellow one. Um, but like for me personally, like I'm kind of excited to play Mario Sunshine. I hope they fix the controls. The original version of it was just inverted and you couldn't change it. And I'm one of those weird, like maybe right brain people or whatever that I can't. Like I just couldn't play it inverted. But the game itself was
Yeah, I
fun.
have to
What I
change my.
played.
I do the inverted the XY or the XY coordinate. I have every game I do that I have a 3D game.
You
I
have
invert it.
you have to have it. Yeah, there's people who are yeah. I still think by the way that that's with age, like gaming age, because there was a certain
Well,
point
and
in
if you've ever
gaming,
played a flight sim,
right?
it's going to be inverted. Up is down
Yeah,
and down is up.
right. And see, I never, yeah. But anyway, yeah,
I
because
don't either, but damn it, if I did, I would also have to.
all my friends who are older than me, they're like it all has to be inverted, and then all my friends who are like my age or younger than me, they all, no inversion at all. But anyway, I hope they fix that because if they fix that, this game for me is gonna be something I'm excited about. I could really care less about Mario 64 and even Mario Galaxy. It might be cool. I don't know. But it's still like I don't know. Is this worth it? I guess is part of my question too because I'm starting to see a lot of people starting to ask that question. Well, they use the
It's
ROMs,
just
so
a
they were
nostalgia thing.
lazy about doing
Yeah,
it.
they're,
And the $60. I mean,
yeah. See, now that's crazy. Well, see, I will say that Super Mario Sunshine and Super Mario Galaxy, the Galaxies, are fairly expensive on the GameCube. I have owned them and I have resold them, and they're 40, 50, $60 a title.
they are.
So, yeah, Super Mario, 64 may be a $25 Super Nintendo game, but if you're a big Mario fan and you don't own old systems, you don't own a GameCube, you don't own an N64, you know, or Nintendo has said they're not doing an N64 classic, and I would think that I believe that because
God,
they're
I hope
pushing these
not.
games. Yeah, I don't think they will because they're already saturating the market with their Mario games, and that would be the selling point for buying a N64 classic, and they're already saturating the Switch with it. So I would say they're not going to, but yeah,
No,
it's
that's a
it's
good
not worth it
argument.
for me.
Yep, right, right. Yeah, no. I mean, it is unfortunately worth it for me because I've already bought it. But yeah,
Did you just say boughten? Oh man,
well, I was trying to think of a way to phrase it. So,
I have already purchased them.
well, yeah, I've got. Let me just say, I've got a few copies. let me just
And
throw
like
that
I
out
said,
there.
for me, yeah, I just like I said, I own those systems. Not much on the Mario Galaxy or you know, and I own a lot of Wii games, so like Paper Mario and blah 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 blah. So they're fun. I like playing Mario games. I can bust through a Super Mario Brothers in about 8 minutes, which is considerably slower than just about every other person who tries to speed run that game. But you know,
I think too, though,
uh,
some of that does speak to nostalgia. It's like you're talking about Bioshock. Um, I speed ran Bioshock for the fun of it, and that game is nowhere near as like scary and like the suspension that used to be associated with that game. It's not there anymore. Like age has kind of killed that game. Like as far as like what it was, if that makes sense.
But sure, it had its time. I also mean how much fun you had. I had in Bioshock 2. I had, and the first one. I had too much fun at the vending machines. Hey, come
Oh
over here,
yeah,
buy some ammo.
no, they were great. They
Just
were definitely no, and they were like I loved the first and second one. I don't know why I never got to the third one. I guess I'm kind of glad I didn't after our conversation. Um,
the third one's just depressing. Is what it is.
I know it's somewhere in the sky, but we don't have time for that. So I do want to get on to discounted games. Um, I'm gonna be honest with everyone. Pretty much, I was ahead of the curve last week because all the things I said are still the big discounts that are going on this week. So I'm just
Yeah,
gonna.
I don't think they've renewed their discounts. Let's just say I didn't pick discounted games, but I did pick games that are not expensive. How about that one?
That's a good route to go. So I'm just gonna re-say the games again, and one of them I can actually give a little bit of a hint or a clue, I don't know, a peek behind the curtain to see if it's good. You probably don't need my personal take on it, but Ni no Kuni, it's still down. I think you got a few more days on that one. It's 14.99 down from 49.99. That game, this game I never played. I've always heard rave reviews about it, and let me tell you, nobody was lying about that. Um, the if you're one of those people like me who like I don't mind playing as somebody is a different color than I am or even a different sex than I am, but I'm an ageist and I don't like playing as kids. I don't know why. It just takes me out of the game if the main character is a kid. And that is this game. But let me tell you, the story it's telling, it doesn't really affect it at all. Um,
Now, give me a comparison of what that game is like.
God, take a Western anime, and I say Western because it's very serious, very somber. It looks to be fun. It looks like it maybe took place. The story itself, like maybe takes place in like a steampunk kind of world, except
Yeah,
for
that's what I was about to say. Yeah.
take that though and take out the steampunk aspect and put it into like the 50s. And that's really what you see is this like kid in the 50s. Some things happen. I'm definitely not going to ruin the story. Um, and then you're transported to like a different world, but at the same time you kind of feel like maybe this little kid has just gone through all this tragedy and he's doing this in his mind. I haven't figured out if that's true or not, and it may not be. It's just something I'm thinking of. I might be looking too deep into stuff. But and then in this world you're in like a classic like RPG that just looks really beautiful. They've done a lot of amazing work to it. Think of the classic 3D RPGs of our day and then make it so much brighter, so much more colorful, almost like you're in this happy world where it just so happens beasts are trying to kill you, and you're learning magic and you're learning to summon, and there's a lot of great stuff with this game. The only thing there again, like without a doubt, if you can't pay $15 for it, I don't know what's wrong. Like I would find a way to buy this game for 15
Sounds a
bucks.
lot like Full Metal Alchemist, kind of.
Yes, yeah, in a lot of ways, except for better. Um, but yeah, no,
Without a little 7-year-old, 9-year-old in a suit of armor.
right, right, yeah, no, unless, yeah, less steampunky, but you do get that hint. I only use that term steampunk because it's kind of like old but new kind of thing, and it kind of has that going with it. But it's a great game. Again, you probably don't need my input to know it's a great game. And then the other one that I was really big on was Tales of Vesperia. And all the Tales games are really great. As everyone can tell at this point, I am a RPG fan, so I'm gonna say that. And then I did talk about Spider-Man. Spider-Man is still 19.99 for the complete collection. That's totally worth it because once it goes off of this sale, the original Spider-Man or original PS4 version of Spider-Man will go back onto around 20 some bucks or whatever, but you're still gonna have to pay. Um, I think it's 6.99, 8.99, and then 9.99 for all the DLC. So you're getting that just by buying the definite or definitive version of it for 19.99. It's an easy
And that's a
pickup.
PSN download title, right? So
Yes, yeah, that is PSN, obviously not Switch. And then games I'm looking forward to. Honestly, at this moment, I'm gonna cop out on this one, and I'm just gonna say I'm looking forward to Super Mario 3D All Stars. Namely, I'm looking forward to seeing if they fix the controls in Sunshine. Because I'll be honest, there's not much coming out in this this month. So I'm taking it. I'm taking a
this is definitely a wait to see couple months for the last quarter of this time. So
It really is. It's gonna get
I
it's gonna get super busy. Like our sections of the show are gonna get really big on reviews and what I'm looking forward to here in a month or so. But yeah, right now it's a little dry.
Well, I tell you what games, and we'll go over it's off the PSN or Xbox network, and I'll say we'll go over to the PC side of things. And one game that I thought was absolutely fantastic, and it's cheap, and if and it's kind of somewhere between Doom and like an extremely violent version of yes, I know, Kitty. Uh, of Skyrim is called Elderborn, and if you haven't seen this game, go watch a trailer for it. And it's kind of that first person perspective of magic and weapons and stuff, but it's just an all out mayhem craziness. It's beautiful, it's colorful, it's and I think I can't remember if it was 14.99 or 19.99, but either way, it's released from this year in January, so it's been around for
Wow.
a little bit. But I think they've got one or two DLCs out for it. But it is not one of those games you're going to spend weeks on unless you're playing through it slow, which doesn't hurt either. But it is $15 worth of a lot of fun. So I just don't think you can really beat that price, and you don't need a super awesome PC to play it. It's got a pretty lower end, like GTX 660 or something like that. So if you've got a PC made within the last 6 or so years, you should be good. And then the other one, which isn't on sale but will go on sale because it goes back and forth, is Hunt. And I don't know if anybody's played Hunt. Recently, it's kind of one of those you can pair up with some people with, and it has kind of that not Borderlands because it's not post-apocalyptic, but it's kind of like you go around and hunt everything from crazy evil monsters, you know, killing people in a barn to, and it's crazy is that you can be in the world with somebody else who's also trying to get to that monster first, or even take down you as bounty hunters. And if you've got a few people to play with, even just one other person, hunt can be really fun and almost freaky scary
So
at the same time.
this game came out on PS4 not long ago, and
The hunt, yes.
a lot of people went crazy over it, and it looked really fun. Maybe a little too competitive for me in that regard. Because it looks like those one-off kind of like action-packed balls to the wall for like 20 minutes, and like
Well, it's
then
actually a
restart
lot
it.
of like, going from point A to point B and staying alive in the process, with just random crap, coming at your zombies and dead people. And then when you get to the part, you kind of got, dun, dun, I mean, you got to, you have like a, you're so close to your target kind of thing. It's like kind of a psychic force you can use to kind of see how close you are to kind of get into it. But then it's gunpowder and shells and rifles, and it's not like Red Dead Redemption kind of stuff. It's different.
'Cause it does
But
use like old school weaponry, right?
yeah, yeah, and believe it or not, it's pretty cool. It's one of those games you definitely will panic for, and it's the same process. You're fighting some creature, some asshole that gets on the shoots through the side of the barn and hits you. And you're just like, yeah, with it. But
I've
like I
heard
said, it can
so
be
much good, so
good.
many good things about that game.
Yeah, and I, like I said, I've been wanting to get into that game. I've played the demo, and even though, like you said, it's both of these games that I've got have been out for a little while. Their reviews are, excellent on both of them. So there's no risk of suckage, and there's no hacking.
What's
And
the price tag on that again?
I think Hunt is actually at $39.99 right now, which is not bad, but it does go on sale, and I think it was $24.99 when it
That's
was
not
on sale. So
that's not bad if it drops back down to that.
yeah, and it will because it goes on and off pretty often, and it's still pretty popular. And like I said, both of those games on Steam have the quote very positive, not mostly positive, very positive
And what was the
reviews.
first one
And
again?
I think Hunt is 39 at the moment, but Elderborn is like $15.
Elderborn. Okay, yeah. No, that game's got me
Yeah,
thinking. I want to try to get that one. So what are you looking
yeah.
forward to? Are you looking forward to anything or?
Well, believe it or not, I there's one game I actually need to pick up a PS4 myself. So if anybody wants to send me a free one, or or trade me for a Super Nintendo, I can make it happen. I did pay like $70 for my Xbox One from some small child who probably needed to buy their braces on Facebook. So,
No, it was
but
meth,
the only
dude.
reason I
Come
want a
on.
PS4
We live in Kansas.
is because I miss playing Godzilla on the PS4, and that may be a Japanese only title, but I've actually watched live streamers playing Godzilla on the PS4 and been extremely jealous.
I don't think it is it?
Yes, sir, it is on the PS4.
No, I mean a Japanese version only.
Godzilla tends to have quite a few Japanese-only titles, and they've always had Japanese-only titles. I don't know if Shin Godzilla's had a game at all. For those of you who follow Godzilla, Shin Godzilla was the one that was a very different Godzilla in Japan. And by the way, it's a badass movie. And I did get that DVD, believe it or not, at the used game store that we talk about, which was amazing because it had a one-day theater release here in Kansas where I had to go to. It was at the Warren.
That's how we.
And it was before COVID, of course, and I did not go to the one-day release, and it was subtitled even then. So I think the DVD I have actually has an English track. But yeah, Godzilla on the PS4. I'm actually looking forward to finding a copy of that because I actually have to have the disc, and I will buy a PS4 to get that disc. I have it.
That's commitment. But I'll tell you this: like first of the year, I bet you'll be able to pick up a pretty cheap PS4.
Yes, and that's
Probably.
my
Maybe not though. To be honest, I was looking at some numbers, and like that first quarter that the PS4 and the Xbox One came out, like they were big, and then the next quarter, right after that, the PS3 and the 360 had a pretty big tick up, like because I think a lot of people buy them and then use them as trade-in, or if they already have them, they use them as trade-in credit.
Yeah, there's usually a glut of them going. You might want to if you're gonna dump your PS4 for a PS5 or an Xbox, sell it to if it's still working and your dog didn't take a shit on it and something's not weird with it. Sell it to a friend before you sell it to a used game store. Try even Facebook beforehand because you're gonna get. Although we do support your local used game stores, they're like a pawn shop. You get jack shit for them, and you're gonna. It's not even worth the trade in. Get your money. Get some money back out of these systems. Sell them to a friend. Sell them on, sell them on eBay. Do the work to get your money back out of it.
I will say though, in this time frame, GameStop usually gives you like a pretty good chunk of change if you use it towards the next system.
Yeah, if you buy another system through them, yes.
Yeah, I've done that before. Like I did that with my PS4 Pro, and I think I only paid like $100 extra to get the PS4 Pro from like my old like first gen PS4. And the price difference on that was pretty remarkable.
Did they give you a new one, or did they give you a used PS4 Pro?
A brand new one.
Oh, well, that's not too bad, definitely. And if the company needs them, if there's a high demand for them, they may do that.
You are 100% right. And right now, by the way, I happen to know some insiders, and yes, the demand for used stuff is way, way up. I mean, I've heard they're buying PS3 controllers for up to $20, which is crazy for GameStop. Like I know some people are like, yeah, no, they're like $40-$50. Yeah, I know, but they used to only give you like 5.
Yeah, and I'm picking PS3 now. We're talking like either standard Sony brand PS3 controllers, not wired, regular standard wireless. And if they're in good condition, even I will pay $5, $6, $7 for them at a garage sale. So, I definitely pick those up when I find them. Even trashed controllers, I'd buy them just for the parts.
Yeah, you can always tinker around with them.
You can always take a 2 or 3 trashed ones and make a good controller if they're not too different on the revisions of the boards inside. So, yeah, I mean, there's definitely and that may also just be because most people's PS3s are freaking trashed at this point. So the people who still have working ones need to, refresh their controller supply.
On a side note, I got one of my friends. He's laid off, so I taught him how to fix the drift on the Joy Cons, and like
Hmm.
he's turned that into like a full time job. He just buys shitty Joy Cons that are already broken, have the drift, buys them on eBay for a lot of them, like a whole lot of them, and then fixes them up, takes them up to like GameStop or a local game place, and easily triples his money.
Oh,
Because
well, that's. I mean, is he selling them as fixed with no drift kind of thing?
right, right. It's completely and that's the thing. Like, if any of you guys are familiar with the Switch, even I would say 50% of the times you buy a pre-owned one, it has drift. Like, and that's why you're buying a new one because yours has drift, and so you don't want that shitty one that has drift. So yeah, if you got someone who's like, no, this one drift free, you can check it out. Yeah, you can get.
Drift free.
It's such a problem. It really is, and it's really easy to
Oh no,
fix.
I've witnessed it. I've picked up a couple of, even yours, and been watched that little cursor just, move across the screen by itself.
It's so, and it's really, really simple to fix. But yeah, like, yeah, I just thought it's funny. Like, one of my friends has turned it into a job.
That's pretty smart. That's the
Hey,
way to do it.
it works. Anyway, Scott, thanks a lot, man. Um, I think that's it for us. That pretty much caps it off.
Make
Uh,
sure you put a nice amount of Vaseline on your thumbs before you have a big gaming experience. That way you don't have those calluses and have to tell your friends you can't play that weekend.
all right. Hey, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. You guys take care.